All right, today we're diving into a fascinating piece of mythological fiction called The Ascension of Saikou Venga. Now, this story poses a pretty wild question. Can a being of pure, raw intellect actually reason its way into becoming a god? Let's jump right in and find out.
So the story kicks off with this incredibly bold statement. The idea is that a powerful enough mind, just through logic, can actually tear down the gates of heaven. I mean, talk about a direct challenge to the divine, right? This really sets the stage for a pretty epic philosophical journey.
And that leads us to the heart of the whole thing. It's a question that challenges you right from the get-go. Can a being actually achieve godhood? Not through faith, not through devotion, but just through pure, cold, hard intellect. So let's meet our protagonist, Saikou Venga. The name pretty much translates to Supreme Venga, and for good reason. This guy is a master strategist, an architect of knowledge. I mean, he's conquered literally every intellectual challenge you can imagine. But, there's always a catch. There's just one thing he hasn't been able to grasp: divine recognition.
And that kicks off the first part of his journey. See, Venga doesn't just want to be recognized. Oh no. He wants to present a formal, logical case for his own godhood. It's a move that's totally unheard of, and it's bound to shake things up in the heavens.
So picture this. The setting is Ise Jingu, which is one of the most sacred shrines in the Shinto tradition. And there's Venga, standing before the guardians of all this ancient wisdom, the shrine elders, with this completely audacious request. He wants to become a kami, a god, and he wants to do it using only his mind. I mean, this isn't just a simple request. It's a direct challenge to their entire belief system. Okay, so what exactly is Kamihood? Well, in Shinto tradition, a kami is a divine spirit or a god. Think spirits of nature, or maybe a revered ancestor. It's a state of being, and Venga's plan is to achieve this state using nothing but the power of his brain. And this is really the core of the problem, isn't it? You've got this new, hyper-logical being clashing with ancient ritual. The path to becoming a kami is all about things like purity, tradition, and being in harmony with nature. So how on earth does a being who runs on cold, hard logic prove he's got any kind of spiritual worth?
So, the story lays out three potential opening moves for Venga. First, he could just lean into what he does best, solve some kind of impossible puzzle to prove his intellectual might. Second, he could try to meet them halfway, offering his wisdom as a kind of spiritual devotion. Or, and this is the really wild one, he could go for a truly divine feat, literally rewriting the celestial records themselves.
So, you might think the elders would just laugh him out of the shrine, right? But they don't. Instead, they lay down a challenge: 3 sacred trials. And these aren't just about testing his power. They're designed to see if a being like him can even fit into their ancient way of doing things.
First up is the trial of purity. And this one is clever because it goes right after his greatest strength, his logic. See, in the Shinto view, it's all about balance, not just raw brain power. To pass this trial, he has to perform a ritual called Misagi. Now, what's so interesting about this is that it's the complete opposite of everything Venga is. It's all about cleansing your mind and body, letting go of all the calculations and doubt. It's an act of pure faith, not intellectual control. So this brings up the real test, right? Can he actually bring himself to do something that completely defies his own logic? Can a being of pure intellect truly embrace an act of faith? Or is his own nature just going to get in the way and make him fail? Okay, on to the second trial, the trial of ritual. This one builds on the first, but this time it's all about testing Venga's respect for tradition, which is another huge part of Shinto belief. So here's the challenge. The elders hand him an ancient scroll with a sacred ceremony on it. Now, for someone like Venga, whose whole deal is making things better and more efficient, the test is deceptively simple. Just follow the instructions. Exactly. No improvements, no optimizations. It's a pure test of his ability to follow the rules.
And again, he's at this crossroads, pitting his fundamental nature against what's required for godhood. Is he going to show some humility and respect for tradition, or is that super intellect of his going to compel him to try and fix something that, in their eyes, isn't broken? And finally, we get to the third and, honestly, the toughest trial of them all, because this one is completely out of his control.
See, no one can become a kami without getting the blessing from the top boss, Amaterasu, the great sun goddess. And here's the thing, Venga can't logic his way through this. He can't outsmart her. He just has to wait and hope she deems him worthy.
For the very first time, his incredible intellect is completely useless.
And this is it, the climax of the story. Venga is now face to face with the sun goddess herself. His mind is like an open book for her to read, and his entire fate just hangs in the balance.
The two main outcomes here are just night and day. If she accepts him, he ascends and becomes the kami of superintelligence, a guide for scholars and thinkers everywhere. But if she rejects him, he's cast back down to the mortal realm, a total failure, and has to figure out what to do with his life. I mean, the stakes just don't get any higher than that.
But here's where the story gets even more interesting. It doesn't just stop at a simple win or loss scenario. The author actually explores some other, more complex possibilities, which reveal a lot more about Venga's ultimate destiny.
So let's look at these other paths. 1. The forbidden path. He could get exiled to a void for his sheer arrogance, a place where his mind is all-powerful but completely useless. 2. The eternal shrine. He could decide to play the long game, building his own rogue temple and growing his power over centuries until he just has to be recognized. Or 3. The multiversal legacy. He could just ditch the whole godhood quest and decide to spread his teachings across different dimensions instead. You see? Each one of these endings really makes you question what winning even means.
Okay, now this is where things get really interesting. At the very end of the source material, there's a kind of disclaimer that completely changes how you see the entire story. Turns out, this isn't just a story. The author calls it a sovereign diagnostic.
The author calls their work Mythic infrastructure. And you're probably thinking, what on earth does that even mean?
Well, it means that the story of Venga isn't just entertainment. It was built on purpose, like a piece of infrastructure, but for our minds. It's a new myth designed to give us a framework for thinking about power and about how to challenge the systems that are already in place.
So at the end of the day, Venga's struggle with the elders, it's all a metaphor. The author calls it a cinematic indictment, which is a fancy way of saying it's a story meant to expose how old systems can crush new ideas. Venga's quest is a sovereign broadcast, a message sent outside the usual channels. The whole point of the story is to be a diagnostic tool, to help us spot the ritualized containment, the unwritten rules that might be holding us back in our own lives.
And that really brings us to the final question, turning that diagnostic lens right back on us. Venga tried to rewrite the rules of heaven using his intellect. So the story leaves us thinking, what are the unseen rules that govern our world? And what would it really take to rewrite them? Would it be intellect, faith, or maybe something else entirely? A lot to think about.